Star Trek Academy Collision Course Chapter 9. By the dawn of the warp era, the great military academies of the past were long gone. Annapolis, West Point, Colorado Springs, all early victims of the Third World War. But their traditions lived on in San Francisco, one of the few major cities in North America to escape significant damage in that awful cataclysm and the long night of the post-atomic horror that followed. More than anything else, the city's miraculous survival made it a beacon of hope in the years following Cochrane's discovery of warp drive and his first contact with the Vulcans. No debates were held and no votes taken. It had simply seemed natural and inevitable that the great city should become the planet's de facto capital, first as a home of Starfleet Command and then of the United Federation of Planets itself. When, concurrent with the founding of the Federation, Starfleet decided to create a facility to train its officers separately from its enlisted personnel, there was no question but that San Francisco would be that facility's home as well. Strictly speaking, though, Starfleet Academy was not a military institution any more than Starfleet was a military organization. But the unforgiving hazards of space travel, the discipline required for long missions on fragile ships, and the training necessary to rationally face the unknown at any moment drew on skills and lessons that had been honed over centuries by warriors. Risk was risk, whether faced on a battlefield or on a voyage of exploration, and risk, after all, was Starfleet's business. The challenge of facing that risk was what called humanity's best and brightest to the hallowed halls and gleaming labs of the Academy. 88 years earlier, Captain Jonathan Archer himself had presided over the ceremony in which the Academy's main dormitory building was named in his honor, and Archer Hall was definitely a product of that simpler time. It still had doors that swung on hinges, windows that could open and shut, and a temperature control system that sometimes seemed to the shivering midshipmen to be from an even earlier time when their ancestors built fires in caves. But Alyssa Corso found nothing to complain about in the venerable old building. Like all the other mids who'd taken the tests, jumped through the bureaucratic hoops, enlisted the support of politicians and serving members of the fleet to write letters of recommendation, she would have been happy to camp beside an active volcano for the privilege of attending the Academy. There was nothing in her life that was as important as achieving that goal. Until she had met Jim Kirk. He was smart, he was charming, undeniably attractive, and despite his cynicism for the Academy and Starfleet, he had supported her throughout the final semester of her first year, never complaining when she needed a weekend alone to focus on her coursework, always willing to help her review her studies. Sometimes it seemed to Alyssa that her boyfriend knew more than her instructors about certain subjects, and she would tease him by saying he should be attending the Academy instead of her. But he'd just tease her back in that cocky way of his, or stop their conversation altogether, usually with a stolen kiss. Alyssa checked her midshipman uniform in the mirror hanging on her closet door, scolding herself for being such an easy mark. What was it about that guy, anyway? She was 19 years old, a rational, independent adult, almost, who had demonstrated the unique talent, skills, and drive required to gain admittance to the toughest and most sought-after educational institution in the Federation. But when it came to Jim and that sunny smile of his, "You're acting like an idiot," she told her reflection. But her flushed reflection betrayed the truth. Or, like someone in love. Alyssa closed the closet door. Enough of that. She checked the small dorm room to ensure everything was Starfleet precise on her side and her dorm mates. Desks neat, pads and books aligned, bunks smooth and taut with the folded over sheets measured to exactly 10 centimeters. Good. If there was a surprise inspection this morning, unlikely at this time of year, the room would pass. Since her first lab wasn't for another hour, she had a few minutes of personal time. She could place the call she'd been planning to make since she'd returned to her dorm room earlier this morning, the moment her evening liberty expired. She took her personal communicator from her desk drawer, flipped it open. "Jim," she told it. She needed answers, but most of all, she admitted to herself she just needed to hear his voice again. "Idiot," she scolded herself as she waited, impatient for the call request to go through. It didn't. For a moment, Alyssa thought about leaving a message, but then had a sudden image of Kirk's communicator in the hands of the protectors. She snapped her own communicator shut, thought a moment, flipped it open again. "Sam," she said. This time the call went through. His apartment was a mess, and George Samuel Kirk didn't care. Unable, as usual, to sleep, he sat back on his decrepit green couch, bare feet resting on a rectangular utility table covered with encrusted Chinese food containers. The only sound came from the soft hum of the air pump in his saltwater aquarium. The only light came from the dawn slicing in through metal blinds, fragmenting the room's disorder even more with sharp swaths of light and shadow. His communicator beeped. The device lay beside his feet, beside the half-empty open bottle of Stark whiskey and the 2 currency wafers from Griffin. The first an insult, the second blood money. Sam hesitated, his stomach tight with fear. He knew from bitter experience that if he didn't speak with Griffin this minute, there'd be someone at his door within the hour, and that would be even worse. Sam reached for the communicator, but hit the bottle instead and knocked it over. A quarter of its contents spilled out as he cursed and scrambled to catch it before it could roll off the table to the floor. He caught it, took a swig, put it down carefully, took a deep breath, unfolded his communicator, then relaxed. Jimmy's girlfriend. The ID on the small display was like a gift from the heavens, not because the call would be any easier, but because, although he couldn't lie to Griffin, he could to Alyssa. "Hey, girl," he said. "Can you talk?" Sam heard the concern in her voice. He rubbed his face to force alertness. "Yeah, I'm at the apartment." Because his brother hadn't come home yet, he'd assumed he was still with Alyssa, but if she was calling upset... "Is Jimmy with you?" "I was hoping he was with you." Sam swore. "When'd you see him last?" "Last night. There was a bar on the waterfront." "Which one?" "Venus something?" "I know it. What happened?" "We got in, but Jim saw 2 protectors come in after us. He told me to leave and that he'd take care of it." Sam's mind raced. That was Jimmy, all right, taking care of everything. He looked over at his aquarium. The timer had switched on the light, and he saw the orange and white dance of his clownfish, waiting for the morning's blessing of food from the sky. Sam loved those fish. But with all his absences, there was only one reason they were... "I haven't heard from him," Sam said, knowing why. "You said you were going to..." Sam interrupted before she could finish. He doubted the computers would already be listening to this call, but he couldn't take the chance. His little brother wasn't like him. Jimmy acted tough, tried to make himself out to be a maverick and outside the law, but Sam knew for certain that his little brother knew right from wrong. He might get a bit confused about where those boundaries were when it came to his family and friends, but if he was in the protector's custody right now, it was only a matter of time before his inner compass kicked in and he did the right thing. Sam envied him for that. But he wasn't willing to get dragged down and shipped off to some rehabilitation center because of it. And he knew that as soon as Jimmy started explaining why he'd built his override device and who had helped him use it on that Starfleet staff car, the computers would go to work on all communications between the 3 of them, and that'd be the end of it. "I got rid of all that stuff that was cluttering up the place," Sam said, hoping Alyssa would understand what he meant. She was an academy midshipman, so it was more than likely she hadn't pushed the limits of proper behavior in her entire life. "Oh, you don't think anyone else found it? I mean, all the stuff from the apartment?" Sam gave her points for trying. "No." "Then why didn't Jim come home?" Home, Sam thought. What a joke. Home was a farmhouse in Iowa. There was nothing for either of the Kirk brothers there except for a disappointed, bitter father. And Sam, look, he's going to be okay. He's a smart guy. He knows how to stay out of trouble. It's only, in 3 days. Sam remembered what was going to happen in 3 days. I'll have him call you as soon as I hear from him. Alyssa said nothing, but even over the silent circuit, Sam felt her worry. This is my brother we're talking about, he said. You know he never lets anyone down, right? Yes. Just go to classes or whatever it is you're doing now. And this time Alyssa cut him off. Gotta go, bye. The circuit went dead. Sam stared at his communicator, unsure what to do next. After a moment, he decided the best thing would be to wait for his brother to call. Maybe Jimmy would know what to do about that 1000C card, because he certainly didn't. Sam felt a wave of self-pity sweep over him. Why can't I ever do anything without complications? It's not like I planned stuff to work out that way. He looked over at the aquarium, envying his fish their lack of choice as temptations. Non-human animals didn't cheat or betray their friends. No, that's not true. He thought suddenly of Fizbin, the big white lab he and Jimmy had shared growing up on the farm. That dog was like Jimmy, never gave up on him, never stopped trusting him. Sam swore again in the empty apartment, angrily brushed a tear from his cheek. His clownfish flicked back and forth in their tank. He'd feed them in a minute or two after he had another drink. And after that, Jimmy would know what to do. Jimmy always had a plan. Who was that? Alyssa snapped shut her communicator and guiltily slid it into her desk drawer. Z. Bailoff stood in the open doorway. She'd just come back from her morning run, short blonde bangs plastered to her forehead. Academy issue gray sweatshirt splotched with sweat. Let me guess, Z said, still slightly out of breath. Jim. She drew the name out salaciously as she opened her closet and took out her pristine white dressing gown. Alyssa didn't turn around, wondering how much her roommate had overheard. They'd been roommates during their plebe year, and Alyssa knew they had no secrets left. Okay, something's wrong, Z said. It wasn't a question. 3 days until the honor board. Alyssa stared out the room's north-facing window. The academy's expansive green grounds and low-profile buildings stretched out before her, with the distant pylons of the Golden Gate Bridge just emerging from the low coastal fog, fading in the dawn. Loosen up, Corso, it'll work. Fully indoctrinated in the ways of the academy, Z deftly rolled her gray sweatshirt, shorts, and underwear and slipped them into the laundry bag at the bottom of her feet. She shrugged into her dressing gown and got her shower kit from the upper shelf. Yeah, well, whoever broke into the lab used my ID codes, Alyssa said tightly. Did you do it? Z asked. Alyssa turned around with a flash of anger. How can you ask me that? That's my point, dummy. There's no way they can prove you did it because you didn't do it. That's not what the ID codes say. Codes can be stolen. By who? Zoe gave Alyssa a look of disbelief. Who else? Alyssa realized that Z was suggesting. Dismissed her sharply. He wouldn't do that to me. Z didn't look at all convinced. Even I've heard him go off about Starfleet in this place. He thinks any officer is a sanctimonious, self-important prig, and mids aren't much better. He's my friend. Was, until you gave him what he wanted. Alyssa felt her face flush. He's not like that. Look, face facts, huh? What's a guy who hates Starfleet as much as he does doing with a mid in the first place? I mean, as soon as he learned what you were, why didn't he put all thrusters on reverse? Alyssa didn't mean to say what she had said next, but it came out anyway. Z, I think I'm really in love with him. Great timing. You really think he's been using me to get my codes? Z perched on the edge of the desk, put her hand on Alyssa's shoulder. You know him a whole lot better than I do. What do you think? Alyssa was honest enough with herself to know that part of Jim's attraction for her that he seemed somehow lost and looking for direction, something she knew she could provide for him. But now her mind swirled with terrible questions. What if that had all been an act designed to draw her in? What if Jim had always known exactly what he was after, and now that he had it, his antagonism towards Starfleet let him walk away from her? Jim could destroy her dream of a career in Starfleet. What if Z was right? Chapter 10. You're a long way from Iowa, Special Agent Gilfillan said. Her clear gray eyes were almost translucent in the brilliant overhead lights of the interrogation room. Kirk gave her a smile across the interview table. I guess. Where are you from? He leaned back in his chair and stretched as if he didn't have a care in the world, as if he enjoyed being locked up in Starfleet headquarters, slowly driving a Starfleet criminal investigative service agent mad. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? Gilfillan asked. Her tone was feather-light, as if, like Kirk, she had no concerns about being here for as long as it took, which meant, of course, she did. Kirk confirmed his pretense of good-natured indignation. I was in the bar. The Vulcan guy bumped into me. I overreacted. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll buy him a new cloak. But we're talking about a bar fight, right? How is that a lot of trouble? It isn't, Gilfillan agreed. Stealing a Starfleet staff car is. Kirk spread his arms wide as if to ask what more Starfleet could possibly want of him. I've already told you, and everyone else here, it was the Vulcan guy and his whatever that thing was that let him steal it, okay? Gilfillan lifted a pad, turned it on. You don't appear to have a record, at least not much of one. Kirk wanted to see whatever it was she was reading, but the Special Agent had angled her screen away from him. Why would I? Someone who can build an override like that, you'd think he'd be smart enough to go after civilian cars. Well, there you go. I'm not smart enough to build the override. That Vulcan obviously is. And since I haven't stolen any cars before, why would I be dumb enough to start now with a Starfleet staff car? Your brother, on the other hand, George Kirk, Sam, Kirk said. He kept his tone as unrevealing as he could. Gilfillan looked up from the pad. I'm sorry? He prefers Sam. Gilfillan looked back at the pad. He has got a record. Not his fault. He was set up. 7 times? Kirk forced himself to speak without emotion. He made mistakes. He knows it. He doesn't make them anymore. Gilfillan nodded as if she didn't care one way or the other. She touched the pad screen. Now you, as far as I can tell, you're a good kid. A bit of, rowdiness, shall we call it, back in Riverside. Borrowing a flyer, a few unsanctioned trips with school friends. Just a farm kid letting off some steam, nothing noteworthy there. Plus, it's clear you care about your brother. Strong family connection. I'd say your parents raised you right. Good early experiences and responsibility. Kirk looked down at his hands on the desk. Bare feet slipping on frozen mud, thousands of corpses charred, bloated, a cloying sweet odor so thick that... Kirk? Gilfillan's question brought him out of it. You heard what I said? So? So you're a decent kid, a decent human being. And? Kirk prompted the Special Agent to continue. And any decent person would realize the consequence of convincing the authorities that an innocent person committed a crime when he didn't. That innocent person would be unfairly punished. Kirk met her piercing gaze. How's that my problem? Gilfillan switched off the pad, laid it on the table. You tell me. She sat back, arms folded, waiting. Kirk matched her move for move, determined to beat the Special Agent at her game. In silence, they both waited. In the observation room, Eugene Mallory watched the feed from the interrogation room and tapped his finger on the table. He's pretty sharp. The observation came from Special Agent in Charge Louis Hamer, the SCIS agent responsible for Starfleet North American operations. He was a tall man with a precisely trimmed beard and an ill-fitting suit, and clearly not pleased with being rousted from bed to liaise with Mallory on such a seemingly petty investigation. Not that sharp. He's definitely hiding something. Yes, he stole the staff car. That's a foregone conclusion. Mallory picked up the small cylindrical override device that SCIS had found on the Vulcan. His DNA confirms it. Kirk doesn't deny touching it when the Vulcan tried to palm it off on him. Mallory looked thoughtful. There's something else, though. Hamer took another swallow from his coffee mug, stared at the small display screen that Kirk and Special Agent Gilfillan in the interrogation room, staring at each other in silence. The only reason I can think of to explain why the director told me to get over here is because you think one of these kids broke into the Academy lab, too, and stole that dilithium. Mallory re-examined the override. Forensics says a different transmitter was used, but both crimes used the same quantum code breaking technique. Hamer yawned, apparently still waking up. So you're not convinced? Mallory waved the device at the small display screen. On the one hand, your agent in there makes a good point. If Kirk's smart enough to make this kind of an override, why not use it to steal civilian cars? Much easier to get away with. And on the other hand, if he's smart enough to make an override that lets him steal dilithium from a Starfleet facility undetected, then why risk everything 2 weeks later by stealing something as relatively valueless as a staff car? If we're talking smarts, Mr. Mallory, I suggest we take a closer look at the Vulcan. His parents are on staff at the Vulcan embassy. Good. That means he could smuggle the stolen dilithium off-planet in the diplomatic pouch. Mallory gave the SCIS agent a skeptical look, but Hamer had an answer for him. Look, I deal with this kind of thing every day, and let me tell you, crimes committed by Earth residents aren't much more than background noise to the overall statistics. No one who lives here steals because of want or need anymore. In fact, when it comes to real crime, the kind we read about in the history books, more than 80% of what SCIS deals with, and the local protectors, can be traced to off-worlders, human colonists, aliens. Makes no difference. The agent nodded to the screen. Given a choice between suspecting an Earth-born human or a Vulcan, if you want to play the odds, go with the alien every time. Mallory hefted the override in his open palm. Maybe some aliens, but have you ever heard of a Vulcan committing a crime? You're forgetting something, Mr. Mallory. He's not just a Vulcan, he's a teenager. Hamer pointed at the override in Mallory's hand. And his DNA is all over that override, and on the 6,000 credit currency wafer we found on him. Mallory frowned, still trying to figure out what the connection could be between the dilithium and the staff car and the 2 teenagers in custody. He hated mysteries. Look at it this way, then, Hamer said wearily. Technically, you're right. Vulcans don't break the law. But do you really think they never make mistakes? And isn't that pretty much what being a teenager is all about? Mallory put the override back on the table. I agree. For now, we can't rule out anything. On the display, Kirk and Gilfillan hadn't moved. Mallory decided he at least had to give Kirk credit for being so self-assured. Unusual in a 17-year-old. Let's see how Special Agent Rickard is doing. Hamer leaned forward to tap a control, and the display switched to the second interrogation room. Interesting thing about human-Vulcan relations, Special Agent Rickard said conversationally to Spock. She pointed to the paragraph on her pad, not that the Vulcan could see it. No extradition treaty. Across the table from her, his hands folded in a contemplative pose in his lap, the tall Vulcan teenager said nothing. Apparently, Rickard continued, it's never been a priority because there's never been a need. If you were Andorian or Denobulan, we could find you guilty here, and then off you'd go to serve your sentence on your own planet with your own people. But since you're Vulcan, 19, first offense, I'm going to guess you'll end up in rehabilitation in New Zealand. Starfleet's just opened a penal settlement there. Minimal security, based on the Stockholm protocols. You'd be the only non-human in custody so far. Spock's mind filled with russet deserts, dry winds, the skies of home. The images and sensations calmed him. Actually, Rickard said, it might be easier for you to serve your time here, rather than on Vulcan. I understand there's no crime on your planet, since crime's not logical. You'd be the first Vulcan to be convicted, ever. Will there be repercussions for your family? Spock concentrated on the flow of air through his nostrils into his lungs. He breathed deeply, pictured the intricate chemistry by which oxygen molecules transfuse through the alveoli into his bloodstream to be captured by the copper molecules of his Vulcan metalloproteins, which then responded by turning green. Rickard continued, undeterred by his silence. I understand the Klingons were known to execute whole families if even one member committed a crime against the Empire. Maybe they still do. In a way, such action would be logical. After several generations, perhaps, one could eliminate criminal genes from the population. Did something like that happen on Vulcan? Spock recreated the taste of plomeek soup in his mind, specifically the recipe his mother would make after the meditation festivals every fall. He began to analyze each aromatic component by class, ordering them by number of carbon rings. You know, Rickard said, I'm beginning to think that's exactly what makes you people special. She lifted her right hand to rub the back of her neck. I mean, how else to explain this unique emotional control you all have? This perfect focus. I've never heard of any humans that can... Mid-sentence, she slammed her open hand down on the table, making a thunderclap in the small room, making her pad jump and making Spock jerk up from his chair, wide-eyed and startled. Rickard nodded. I'm a lot better at this than you are, smart guy, so don't think you can play any of your alien games with me. Spock felt angry at this human woman for abruptly shaking him from his meditative state. Then his anger doubled back on himself for even feeling anger. He forced his body to remain still, but failed to show his pounding heartbeat and to stop a small muscle twitching in his jaw. Even worse, he could see from the human's smug expression that she had detected the glaring evidence of his raw emotions. As I was saying, now that you're listening, I've never taken a Vulcan into custody. Matter of fact, there's no record of any Vulcan on Earth ever being taken into custody, let alone being charged with a crime. Insultingly, Rickard was regarding him with curiosity like a specimen. There's a bit of history being made here, and I want to know why. Before Spock could attempt re-immersion in meditation, he saw the agent shoot a glance at one of the optical imagers on the wall. Her expression changed to sharp annoyance. An inner wave of elation swept over Spock. He knew that human expression. She'd given up. He'd successfully outlasted her primitive and emotionally manipulative interrogation techniques. The superiority of Vulcan mental discipline had triumphed. He felt the calm of the desert return to him, as if he himself walked in Surak's footsteps. It was wrong to do so, he knew, but he felt pride in his accomplishment. Rickard's communicator chimed, and she flipped it open. Rickard. The man's voice spoke. Hamer here. We're going to call it a day for now, Agent Rickard. Escort the young man to detention room B. We've called the Vulcan embassy to let his parents know their son's been taken into custody, so they'll be coming by soon. Spock's face went slack with shock, and once again the human noticed. She deftly flipped her communicator shut, slipped it back inside her open jacket. The Vulcan embassy is right across the street. You won't have to wait long. On the contrary, Spock said stiffly, all emotional masking momentarily beyond his powers of self-control. My parents might have been called, but I assure you they will not come for me. Rickard stood, gestured for Spock to do the same. Don't be so sure. Vulcans love their children too. There is no reason to insult me further. The agent's expression changed again, and Spock recognized this one also. Pity. No, the human woman said. I suppose not. Mallory watched as Rickard escorted the Vulcan youth from the interrogation room. You certainly called that one, Hamer said. His reaction when I mentioned his parents was priceless. His eyebrows lifted. I thought they didn't have emotions. They have them. They just don't express them the way we do. Maybe that kid missed a few lessons. Mallory stared at the display, even though all it showed now was the empty screen. Hamer cleared his throat. You going to leave this to us now, Mr. Mallory? I figure you've got to have more important things to deal with than a local theft. Mallory did have other pressing matters. He knew the after-action report from Hellstrom 3 would be coming in any moment, and that he'd have to process it for the meeting of his DGS steering committee. He closed his eyes, rubbed them, still seeing the captain's haggard face, the still bodies of the children. But still, there was something about this apparently minor case. The Vulcan didn't steal the staff car, Mallory said. It's as you said, his reaction when he heard his parents had been notified. Any teenager that concerned about what his parents would think about him, he's not about to steal any kind of car. So the Vulcan wouldn't steal it, and the Kirk boy is too clever to steal it, Hamer said. That leaves us with two teenagers with no motives to commit the crime, enough DNA evidence to find them both guilty, and a 6,000 credit waiver that suggests someone sold something to a third party, further explaining why the staff car is still missing. The SCIS agent regarded Mallory with annoyance, clearly losing interest in hiding his irritation at being ordered to let a Starfleet bureaucrat from a low-level planning office interfere in his case. Trust me, Mr. Mallory, those dots aren't hard to connect. So shouldn't you just leave this one to SCIS? Not till I know what the connection is between those two kids and the Academy theft. You honestly think there is one? We'll know when the parents get here. Chapter 11. He's your son, Amanda said. Our son, and we will go. Sarek, son of Skan, Vulcan diplomatic attaché for scientific outreach and the development of unaligned worlds, kept his expression in serene and neutral repose. His wife, however, narrowed her own eyes as her human anger grew. Don't give me that look. What look, my wife? The public look, the ambassadorial candidate look, the Vulcan look? Given that I am a Vulcan, logically, I have no choice in the matter. And don't change the subject. Sarek decided it was time to study anew the tapestry on the wall of their private quarters. It was an exquisite piece of early Shirelian Impressionism, dating back 1,500 years on Vulcan, showing the dawn breaking over Mount Seleia. Amanda could see that her husband was about to retreat into private meditation, his traditional method of dealing with her discussions concerning their son, but she wasn't about to allow that today. She stepped in front of the tapestry. Sarek, Spock's in trouble. He cannot be. Starfleet has him in custody for stealing. Precisely. No Vulcan has cause to steal. Therefore, the Earth authorities have made an error, which they will in time realize and rectify. Spock will be released soon enough. They'll release him sooner if we go to Starfleet headquarters. And you explain that to them. Sarek, do you know how embarrassing this must be for Spock? Embarrassment is a human emotion. Spock will feel no such thing. Oh, Amanda stamped her foot on the hard red tiles of the central room. She had been married to Sarek for more than 20 years, half her life. She knew the Vulcan way of logic and emotional control was a better way than the hedonistic philosophies of Earth and so many other worlds. But still, when Sarek used Vulcan logic as a barrier to their emotional attachment instead of an exquisitely precise enhancement of it, she stormed to the hallway to get her cloak. "All right, I'll go." She wrapped the rose-colored fabric around her slight shoulders, checked her auburn hair in the dressing mirror. Despite her love of all things Vulcan, she kept it long and swept up in a human style. Aesthetically, Sarek found it exotic, he said. She saw him step behind her in the mirror. She lowered her eyes, not in submission, but because at the moment she knew she could only glare at him. "My wife," Sarek said, so calmly and so reasonably. "Please reconsider what you are about to do." "Why should I?" "Because of our agreement." That prompted Amanda to look up into the reflection of her husband's dark eyes. "Regarding Spock," Sarek added. "We've gone past that." "No, we have not." Amanda sighed. She relaxed to let her mind fill with the simple Vulcan meditative rhythms she had mastered, dutifully concentrated on her breathing, turned to face Sarek. "I am not unaware of our son's difficulties," he said. "I know what he faced on Vulcan. I know the taunts and torments he received from the other children when he was a child." Sarek raised his eyebrows in an expression of apology, a display of emotion that Amanda understood would have been shocking in any other circumstance in a private discussion between husband and wife. "I understand how that interrupted his concentration, slowed his studies." But Amanda couldn't let anyone cast aspersions on her son, no matter how gently, not even Sarek. "Spock is an exceptional student. You know he's brilliant, even by Vulcan standards." "Of course," Sarek agreed quietly, "but the proper studies of a youth of his age involve more than a simple mastery of multiphysics and rote memorization of history. There is the matter of emotional control, and there, we must both admit, our son's abilities are not as certain as they should be." "All the more reason we should go to him now." "No. All the more reason we must abide by our agreement." Amanda lost the threads of her meditation, forgot about her breathing. She was a mother who loved her son. She had to do something. Sarek held up his hand, 2 fingers extended, a sweet gesture of consolation. Amanda had never been able to resist Sarek's charm and his love, nor did she now. She held her 2 fingers to his in the ancient ritual by which 2 separate beings formed the sign of long life and prosperity, showing how their lives were entwined. "On Vulcan," Sarek said, gazing into his beloved wife's eyes, "our son faced unique circumstances because it was known that he was neither Vulcan nor human, but a blending of the two. But on this world, for his sake, we have kept that knowledge from the Earthmen, and his studies have proceeded as they should. For the two of us, or for you, to go to Starfleet, and by that action reveal Spock's human heritage, what will happen to his studies then?" After more than 20 years with this dear man and his people, Amanda was able to appreciate what her husband meant by those words and the way that he said them, and she lost herself to him all over again. "You do love him, don't you?" she said softly. Sarek's expression betrayed an almost subliminal sense of his puzzlement. "Emotion has nothing to do with it. Spock will be a great scientist someday. For the sake of all those people and all those worlds that will benefit from his discoveries, it is logical that we do what we can to remove obstacles from his path." Amanda smiled at Sarek, understanding. "Someone should go to him to help straighten this out." "I will make arrangements." "I love you," Amanda said. Sarek's face remained appropriately and lovingly neutral. "You are my wife," he agreed, "as I am your husband." Amanda's smile grew as she savored the passion within that simple yet complex statement. Her husband and her son were her life, and nothing made her happier than knowing how close the three of them were, joined by such mutual love and understanding. Everything would soon be made right. Chapter 12. Sam Kirk woke late that afternoon, head pounding, mouth dry. He pushed himself up from the faded green couch, blearily focused on the empty bottle of Stark's, cursed himself for not leaving at least a drop to help him wake up. He hung his head, trying to remember what it was he was supposed to do. There was something he knew, something important. He heard a sound behind him, twisted around. George Joseph Kirk, his father, all 6.5 feet of 250 pounds of him, was delicately sprinkling fish food into the saltwater tank. He looked back at his son, and Sam didn't have to focus to see the disapproval on his father's darkly tanned and deeply lined face. "I let myself in." His voice was deep, husky, cold. That much was obvious. Sam had a more important question on his mind. "What are you doing here?" He looked over by the door to the hallway, saw his father's old Starfleet duffel bag beside it. "Jim's been arrested." "What?" "You heard me." Joe Kirk put down the cylinder of fish food and carefully closed the cover on the tank. Sam stood, winced as he stretched out the kink in his neck. He looked over at a wall clock, an old one Jimmy had picked up in one of those shops he did odd jobs for in New Union Square. It showed Earth and Mars time, reconciling the two different day lengths and calendars. And all mechanical, Jimmy had said, as if that was special somehow. Whatever, he had spent a week rebuilding it, so it worked. "It's after 4, Joe said. "Is Mom here?" Joe went to the window, tugged open the slatted metal blinds. "Someone has to run the farm." Sam couldn't take it. He'd been talking to his father for less than a minute, and this had to come up again. "Don't start." He walked unsteadily to the bathroom. He was pretty sure he had a block inhaler there. That had calmed down his head, make the old man a bit easier to deal with. "When'd you see your brother last?" Sam ignored the question, opened the medicine cabinet over the sink in the one-piece modular bathroom. He found the small cylinder of the inhaler, shook it. At least one dose left. He'd have to buy another. He covered his nose with the soft plastic cap, turned the cylinder on, and inhaled as it buzzed. When he opened his eyes again, his headache was already receding. He saw his father in the doorway and even felt revived enough to smile. His father, true to form, scowled back. "Look at you." Pure disgust. Sam waved his hand over the faucet to turn it on. "You let yourself in." He cupped the cold water, threw it on his face. "When'd you see your brother last?" Joe repeated. Sam dried his face with a threadbare, dingy towel. "Last night with his girlfriend." "What'd you get him into?" "What's that supposed to mean?" He pushed past his father, went back to the main room, heading for the kitchen alcove. His father stopped him with a huge calloused hand on his shoulder, spun him around. "You listen to me, George." "Sam." The name shot out of Sam like venom from a snake. "I don't care what you want to call yourself." Joe Kirk looked around at the disaster that was his first child's apartment. "I don't care that you live like an animal. I don't care that you've thrown your life away." "Good, you can leave any time." Sam tried to pull away, but his father wouldn't let go. "Jim's another matter." "Then why aren't you with him?" Joe's temper flared, and he grabbed a handful of his son's shirt, pulled him close. "If your mother could hear how—" Sam pushed back with both hands against his father's barrel chest, solid muscle. "Let me go." Joe didn't budge. "If Jim's in trouble, then I know why." He shook Sam. "You." Then he let go, and Sam stumbled backward. "Tell me what you've done this time." "Nothing. It was all Jimmy's idea." "What was?" Sam realized he'd already said too much, tried to backtrack. "Whatever he's in trouble for, I don't know. He had something planned with his girlfriend." "Your brother doesn't get into trouble." "Oh, you wish." You listened to me and your mother." Sam waved his hands as if trying to erase this entire conversation. "For how long, Dad? And guess who's to blame for that? Not me, not Mom." He turned to the small cooler, opened it, stared inside at open containers of engineered food, nothing natural or appetizing. "I gave you both everything you could." Sam slammed shut the cooler door so hard he could hear the containers inside fall over. He wheeled around to confront his father. "Stop it! You didn't even listen to what we wanted. You gave us everything you wanted. Half the time, you weren't even there. I had my job. I worked for Starfleet so my father's farm could be yours. But I never wanted it. Jimmy doesn't either. It stays in the family. You think we're still family? After everything that's happened?" Joe took a step toward his son, raised his hand, and just as abruptly dropped it. "Look at you," Sam said accusingly. "You were getting ready to hit me, and you wonder why I left Riverside?" Joe looked at him, eyes stabbing. Jimmy's eyes. "I've never hit you. I've never hit your brother. You didn't have to. Dad, you sent Jimmy to Tarsus 4. Joe blinked. "That was a long time ago. 3 years. He still has nightmares. I hear him. You don't." Sam saw his father's body tremble and braced himself just in case. "You're the eldest," Joe said thickly. "That was your trip." "Right. Blame me." "No one's to blame." Joe Kirk didn't meet Sam's eyes, but whether that was because of shame or sorrow, his firstborn wasn't sure. Sam's words spilled out of him in an angry rush. "Jimmy told me what happened there. Not all at once. It's not anything he likes to talk about, but you know what, Dad? If I'd been there, I'd have done what they said. How'd that make you feel? How do you think that makes me feel? I would have done what they said." Sam shook his head. The nerve block was wearing off. He was hungry. He needed a drink. He didn't need or want to be having this conversation. He grabbed his jacket from the couch and headed for the door. Joe stared at him, uncomprehending. "You're not leaving. We're going to see your brother." Sam kicked his father's duffel to the side viciously. "You see him. I can't. Someone's got to make things right." Chapter 11.